Day 76. Day 76 of This Is Not Advice. We are back. Roy and I are here from Bloomberg Beta answering your questions about work. But it's not advice because advice is all autobiographical. And so we're just sharing our perspectives. And we've got a meaty question today. How do I fire someone? And I'll caveat, and Roy, you can add additional context, but this is before you've already made the decision. This is not about like, should I not? Have I given them a performance, performance improvement plan or anything? This is, you have made the decision. How do I actually go about doing it now?
Yeah, ideally you've made the decision, and before that you've warned the person however long you gave them. And I'm also not going to talk today about the aftermath of, like, after you've let the person go, how do you communicate that out to the rest of the organization, your team, whatever. Those are all important
episodes.
What's that?
Future episodes,
exactly. No, we'll tackle all that. This is literally about the act itself. And I'll just say, for me, the first time I fired somebody, it was awful. Like, I agonized over it for months, which was stupid. The second I started agonizing over it, I should have just done it. And like, woke up at 3 a.m. the day I was going to do it. It was like a really grueling thing, in part because I felt like a failure for having to fire the person. And that made me feel very tense around it. And I didn't quite understand why. So like, there's a lot of stuff to deal with, but I'll just say I've now evolved to a place where we want to treat everybody with dignity and respect, but great leaders tend to be great at letting people go, at firing them. And it's a really important skill. So just to say how, there's a just before you're ready part that is preparation that's essential. And that's like, what electronic systems in your company does this person have access to? I mean, ideally you have some people function in your company that can help with this, but this is just, like, do you turn off their email immediately? All those kind of questions. And usually it's best to do like all in one thing. They're gone. Like, having them stick around is usually not helpful for anybody, but you may have your own reasons that may vary. Second thing is money. Like, oftentimes you owe them an unusual last paycheck because they may have unpaid vacation or something like that. There's often a question of how much severance the person might get paid if they're in a role where they might get severance. You have to think all that stuff out. And basically the way it presents itself is paper. You end up with paperwork that person will sign. And usually it's some form of, they get their last severance or paycheck in exchange for some promise not to disparage the company or provide a release. And the last thing you want to do is you want to prepare a script, meaning not like a detailed script of here's exactly what I'm going to say, but at least know what you're going to say, because it's so nerve-wracking. And assuming you're firing somebody for the first time, you want to just walk in not having to remember on the spot what it was you said you were going to say. And then as far as the act itself, set up a meeting in advance. You don't want to tell the person exactly what it's about. It's good to do, I think, toward the end of the day, to avoid creating sort of a long, awkward moment at work for everybody afterward. Plan to bring somebody with you. That could be an HR person, but you just want to have some sense, because oftentimes these things can turn a little bit more tense, and having somebody there to listen, to be a check on you, but also it creates a little bit of formality and allows you to focus on delivering the message as opposed to both delivering and listening. And then just do it. There's some starter scripts online. We'll share some links to them at some point, but you just want to tell the person right up front. There's actually a great scene in Moneyball about this, that you're firing them. And I'd just be aware of the fact that just that language is very violent, and firing is like a military term. And you may find your own language that works for it, but I would certainly be honest and direct. I try to minimize the pain for the person. You want to do that by being quick. And you want to leave out your own emotions. Oftentimes it's tempting to tell people, oh, this is so difficult for me. Don't do that. Like, this is about them, and you're trying to minimize the pain for them. And the last thing is, there's a temptation to get in a back and forth. Is there anything I could have done? Could you change your mind? If you've made a decision, make a decision. This is not the time for a back and forth. And ideally, you're handing over the paperwork. You're asking the person to think it over and react. You're leaving them a minute to react privately. And then you're asking them by some time by which they need to return it. And then, you're giving them some instructions as to any stuff they have to leave behind. And then they go. And so it sounds a lot harder than it is. Ideally, you have somebody to prepare you for it. It's okay if you do it imperfectly. And those are some of the elements.
Wow. What do you do? I know you said to minimize the back and forth, but what do you do if someone reacts and disagrees?
They don't have a choice. It's not a disagreement. Like, if they think it was unfair, they're entitled to their perspective. And I've had cases where people were enraged with me. Most of the time, by the way, people kind of know. They're like, okay, I get it. They're kind of, most of the time people handle it like professionals. But if they get into an argument, it's like, this isn't up for discussion. I've made this decision. It's a choice and we're doing it.
Totally. So, I mean, that is like the ultimate manager question and managing people. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of This Is Not Advice, and next week where we answer your questions. Feel free to send us any that you want to hear more about, or any other guest recommendations, and we'll be back soon.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, Roy.